Okay, so today I'll briefly discuss the unseen and a book Holly recently showed me, The Sense of Being Stared At, Rupert Sheldrake. I should mention, I don't believe everything he writes, but what I'm most interested in is how Sheldrake investigates, quote, telepathy, psychic, paranormal, extrasensory perception, supernatural, or the sixth sense, over and above the five familiar senses of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. I like the definition Sheldrake eventually gives of, quote, the sense of being stared at, and his reason for renaming the thing is that, quote, so many different terms are confusing, and all of these terms carry different implications. And so, as Sheldrake does, I too will define it with a tangible attribute rather than some official title. As a visual artist, I think I'm at least qualified to make one observation, and that is that it's unseen. By the naked eye, of course. So I'll just put that stipulation there. So in my view, it's important to recognize it as unseen because our brain works in such a way that our vision dominates our perceptive apparatus and our cognitive load. So perhaps understanding the mechanical limitations of the mind might answer why we have limited our officious scholarly pursuit of this unseen. Quote, is our scientific understanding of fundamental principles already more or less complete? Have all of the big questions been answered? Sheldrake argues that telepathy and the sense of being stared at are currently unexplained in scientific terms. And I feel that ultimately we must ask if the scope of scientific endeavor is capable of this expedition, or is it the job of the creative architect, the artist, the dreaming philosopher, combination of these, to pursue these stagnations in scholarly endeavor and bring to light the possibilities of a much more dynamic and awesome sensory reality. So what is the unseen? Well, it could be something that we are convinced exists, but that we can't, or maybe we've never seen it directly, like an image of a brain. Me personally, never seen a brain directly, maybe in an anatomy lab or surgery, autopsy, I don't know, something, never seen it. But I believe it exists, and this three-dimensional rendering is sufficient for me to believe in this thing's existence. The unseen, or, quote, the sense of being stared at, raises fundamental questions about the nature of vision. The debate about the nature of vision was going on in ancient Greece at least 2,500 years ago, in the Roman Empire, in the Islamic world, throughout the Middle Ages, and the Renaissance. Of course, Kepler realized that light entering the eyes through the pupil behaved like light entering camera obscura, and he pushed this theory of the retinal image in 1604. However, Sheldrake argues that, quote, vision involves a two-way process, an inward movement of light and an outward projection of images. The inward movement of light is familiar enough. Light moves through the book, through your eyes, the electromagnetic field in your brain, etc. From this point of view of the standard theory, there's no real reason that you should be conscious at all. It's just a physical process. So whatever the mechanism of sight, I have a distinct memory of a brain. And I believe it exists, even though I've never seen one. So what kind of unseen are there? Well, there's something that we could see, but we're not looking at it at the moment. But maybe we have a memory, of a real memory of that thing. There are things that we cannot see with the naked eye or without visual aids, like telescopes, microscopes, microbes or outer space. Then there's things that could be visualized, like audio waves, abstract concepts, but that our eyes can't directly observe. And then, my favorite, the imaginary thing, which can never be seen, but can be imagined and shown in this rendering, or if I told a story. All of the above are on a believability scale. where the imagined is possibly the least believable, as representing something observable in reality, or something that could be observed in reality. But what's most incredible is that we seem to use all of these things, these unseens, to develop our experience of the seen on a regular basis. What I mean is that we see something and we recognize it because of both our past experience with it, but also simultaneously our memories inform our recognition of the world as it goes on. And of course, we remember fairy tales as well as what we see in real life. Sheldrick writes, "Vision involves a two-way process, an inward movement of light and an outward projection of images." Here the physical act of seeing is referenced, but also the psychological interpretation of seeing is also referenced. Another thing to remember is that the exact function of memory is a pretty hotly contested thing. One of the more popular theories surrounding the brain and memory is that we develop these neural pathways when we use them, and making that individual pathway developed and our sense more powerful. Quote, "Each individual neuron may be connected to as many as 15,000 other neurons, forming a network of neural pathways that is immensely complex. This elaborate network is sometimes referred to as the brain's wiring or circuitry. If we're not used repeatedly, they are eliminated." And so this is a dynamic process. For example, if this chart represents known pathways in my mind, if I'm always using my sense of smell to identify with a particular memory or visual, then that sense will dominate the memory access layer. So you can see I'm moving these neural networks. They grow in intensity. And then all the dots on the screen represent how I identify with a particular sensation or memory. In this case, smell is the trigger for that memory. So I think one of the problems with this is that we have a tendency to separate memory from experience when we talk about memory. So we say we have memories, and then sometimes we make memories with our mind, but we neglect to think about how we simultaneously access and create memories when we see something every new time we see it. Now the problem is if you have a brain like this, like Homer's. As funny as this picture is, it's even more interesting that scientists have actually discovered a real-life case of a fully functioning mini brain. Quote, "French doctors are amazed that a 44-year-old civil servant with an abnormally small brain has led a normal life with a slightly lower than average IQ. This is according to Pfizer.com and Fox News. So, the father of two. That is to say, I'm still researching the origins of this. But it doesn't necessarily negate the fact that there are many so-called dysfunctioning brains, that is physically from trauma or otherwise, that have somehow recovered from this and regained motor function, etc., with the areas of the brain that are supposedly damaged and should be monitoring this. So anyway, he goes into the hospital, pain in his left leg. They give him a CAT scan, and this is what they come up with. So the brain was virtually absent. And the condition actually has a name called Dandy Walker's complex, so something to look at. So anyway, question is, when we look at damaged brains and so on, how is it possible that neurological explanations account for memory, the mind, thought, cognition, the brain? I mean, it seems to be sort of something too simplified. How could these explanations account for the brain-mind paradigm? How can this man's or any damaged brain's person recover without the common mass of brain matter that might have otherwise accounted for these mental states? In conclusion, I sense that we're only beginning our journey into understanding the mind and the brain. We rush to explain these complexities, constantly gravitating towards the physical or neurological theories of the day, but we have to step back and imagine. We have to step back and ponder. We have to leap forward and dream. Quote, We are no longer imprisoned within the narrow compass of our skulls, our mind separated, isolated from each other. We are no longer alienated from our environment. We are connected. Thank you.